Hello, everybody. This is Joshua Hatton with One Nation Under Whiskey. I'm joined today, and as always, by my sharp friend, my skinhead against racial prejudice, Jason Neal Patrick Harris Johnson Yellen. Look at that. All our viewers can see you have shaved your head. Look at that.
Look at that. Shaved it for freedom.
Mm-hmm. For freedom.
Here we are. This is nice. I feel like we're entering the home straight of 2025. We always talk about in our heads, we're always 6 months ahead. So as we sit here in September, we're thinking about March of 2026.
True.
And what spring means for Single Cask Nation. And yet we also have OND, October, November, December, which has really become SOND. The big buying months of the year, the celebratory, the festive portion of the year.
Indeed.
And yeah, it's here. You've been traveling. Jess has been traveling. I'm about to start doing some significant traveling. It's it's happening, Joshua. Do you feel the same way, or are you kind of slowly easing out of summer?
I mean, yes, I'm easing out of summer, but I feel as if that ease into SOND, there's that buildup, right? Where there's the preparation, there's the building of the calendar, calling people, setting appointments. When you're going to go out to this market, that market, who do you need to see? And there's so much preparation for September, October, November, December, where it used to be September was the month where you start setting that up. But because you so rightly point out that September has become part of that season, August has become your, where you do all that prep, right? And so you don't get to just ease out of summer. Summer really, you get a little bit of that crunch going on.
Which is then when I feel like summer comes to a screeching halt at the end of July, when you're like, okay, August, what am I doing for the next 4 months? It's still hot, still muggy. That's partly the missing hair on top of my head. It's just so many weeks of ongoing warmth and being out hiking and being buggy and I just tire. I tire of the warm hair on the top of my head. And it just has to be gone. And it is. It's currently gone, but it'll come back. It'll come back over SOND. So.
Yeah. You're sounding so old these days.
Speaking of being gone, and speaking of the start of the selling season, you were gone for today's interview.
I was gone for today's interview because I had a prior engagement. I was
for anyone who thinks the podcast is his priority.
I had other shit to do, I had already planned to go up to Two Guys Cigars up to Salem, New Hampshire. That's one of 3 shops that they have. And they, our listeners will know, and of course the fans of our cigars will know.
Indeed.
They are the retailers who we partner with for our cigars. And the reason that I was up there, I was with our cigar czar, Yoni Miller. And we were up there to meet Terrence Riley of Aganorsa Leaf because he was going to be there. This is for their big annual Two Guys Cigar Expo, right? And here we are. We've known Terrence since 2019, and so after 6 years of having a relationship with him, I've not met the guy before, not in person.
That was tough when you meet people before a global pandemic. Right? It really curtails the beginnings of that relationship.
I really feel like COVID was like a big wet towel on the whole, meeting people thing.
It was. You are correct.
Yeah. So I wanted to meet him. I wanted to, shake his hand. And what was nice about this is, we dumped our balcones to bottle it, put it
Indeed.
on the website, selling great guns. People are drinking it, enjoying it.
Feedback has been phenomenal.
It's been fantastic. I just had some last night, and then I had some more last night, which was nice.
I did a
And
similar dance 2 nights ago. A little was followed by a little more.
So after we'd done that, we shipped the Balcones cask immediately to them down in Miami. They had already rolled cigars for this project, our next cigar project. And so we sent them the fresh casks. And what they did is they started experimenting. Now, viewers will see I have 3 different bags here, 3 different cigars. And let me really get it on camera here. And so what you'll see is one of these was this cigar spent 1 day in the cask. This cigar spent 1.5 days. By the way, this is Yoni Miller's handwriting, which is just shit. Like, you could barely read it, Yoni. And then that is meant to be a 3. I don't know if you could read that, but that was...
The difference isn't obvious across, they could be gold, they could be blue. The internet is not doing the difference well.
But where the difference lies, Jason, is on the nose of this cigar. So this is the 1 day, right? And remember, our Balcones is it's a 4-year-old first fill bourbon cask matured, and it's a peated, right? It's a heavily peated Balcones. And you're getting this sort of the sweetness from the malt, the sweetness from the oak, but this gentle smoke. There's already smoke on the cigar, and it's not even lit, right? And now that's just 1 day. I'm going to skip all the way to the 3 day, right? Because we've only got so much time on this intro, and I don't want to take it all up with this. Because there's
things
something
Josh
else.
has never said. Did they confirm that they put each individual cigar through the bunghole, and then they just have it, and then they extract it through the bunghole?
For the test. They do that for the test to figure out how many days they want the cigar to sit, right? And so now for this is the 3 day one, there's far too much whiskey on this.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Wow, 3 days. Holy
3 days.
macaroni.
Yeah, I think it's already overtaking this beautiful warmth, this like beautiful warmth of the tobacco. There's too much sweetness coming through. And I think
for any viewers watching this, it looks like a mustache. Across you look like somebody from Fat Freddy's Cat, one of my absolutely favorite comic books. But the curly hair, the square glasses, and the wide cigar mustache.
I feel like Gary right now.
But that had to be called out. It just looks terrific. Really terrific.
So I think the 1.5 days may do it, but really the big test is going to be in smoking the cigars and in seeing, right? It's just like we do with whiskey, does the nose, palate, and finish all line up? So we want to do what the, we need to just test the whole experience, from beginning to end. So the other thing that I wanted to mention was, this is the big Two Guys Expo. And while we were there, I met some people, some Single Cast Nation members and listeners of the Padcast. One name you may remember because we've mentioned it on the Padcast. His name was Kiefer. Do you remember talking about a guy named Kiefer?
Of course. How many Kiefers have written in? Exactly one.
There's the one Kiefer. Right? He comes from the Sutherlands. He's down in Texas.
And you know the amazing connection to today's episode.
Exactly.
Holy moly. Clynelish was opened, created, built by the first Duke of Sutherland, and you saw Kiefer today.
Right? Right?
Wow.
You
What a
couldn't
small
plan
whiskey
this shit.
world.
You couldn't plan this shit, Jason.
So good. So good. So good. Was he well?
Yeah, he's doing well. He's doing
Good.
really well. He's
Glad to hear
looking
it.
good. He's a new father, so
Oh, mazel.
congratulations
Yeah,
to him, his
excellent.
wife, his family. And I met his father as well, and we just had a really nice whiskey conversation, talked about balcones and other whiskeys that they dig. And his dad had this whole tour in Scotland, went up to Talisker and,
Oh, fantastic.
which I know you and Ewan talked about, which,
Indeed.
we'll talk about in a second. So that
Indeed.
was really nice. And then we met one other guy who flew in from Kansas
Hmm.
with his wife for this expo, and he was like, "Oh, he recognized my voice. He recognized Dioni's voice, which is terrible, right?
Yeah,
Where
from a
can you hear
dark
anyone's
nightmare.
voice, right? Yeah, exactly. So yeah,
That
that
sounds
was
like a
it was
good
just
time.
really cool. Yeah, it was a
Wow.
good time. Yep. Yep.
Well, as you can imagine, you were certainly missed from the interview.
Thank you.
We did have the Duke of Sutherland himself, Ewan Morgan, in the room today, in the virtual room, being his usual wonderful, geeky self. The thing I've always loved about Ewan is he's a whiskey guy first and foremost. And
Yeah.
he's been with Diageo for a long time now, but he's not just a Diageo company man. He's a whiskey man, and he can talk about any distillery. To be perfectly honest with you, so we had a blast in the conversation. He pulls out. I do make a disclaimer in the interview, but he pulls out.
Well, go easy, Jason.
A very geeky PowerPoint.
Oh.
Anyone who's listening, I'll say this in the disclaimer as well. If you're listening, he explains. If you're viewing, you get value added. So if you have a chance to watch this interview, not only will you get to see Joshua's very best Fat Freddy's cat impersonation, you'll also get to see the PowerPoint as presented by Ewan. But we really focused on the Clynelish distillery. We really nerd out on the details of this. He knew he was presenting to a very geeky audience with One Nation Under Whiskey, and he really leans into that. So if you're here to learn something new, it's going to happen. If you're here to get some mythology confirmed, that was my rubber stamp motion, that's going to happen too. If you just want to hear a Scots guy who's really passionate about whiskey, you're going to get that too. So a really, really terrific time and a really terrific interview. Hello, Ewan Morgan, the Head of Whiskey Outreach and National Luxury Ambassador for Diageo. It has been, I checked my notes, 3 long years since we last had you on the podcast. That was, season 6, episode 4. And now here we are about halfway through season 9. So I know you're a busy chap. What have you been getting up to in the interim?
Well, first of all, hello again, Jason. It's been 3 long years. I'm getting misty-eyed thinking about it. They aren't misty eyes, they're jet-lagged eyes. And you asked what I've been getting up to. I've been traveling. I travel 85% of the year. I'm actually at home for the next 2 days before I'm away again, but I cover the whole country. Talking about whiskey, presenting whiskey, doing media things, doing dinner things, training people. I'm off to Vegas on Sunday, then I'm off to San Francisco. I just got back from Texas, Montana, California, Scotland, Florida, New York, back to California in the last couple of weeks. And tired boy, tired face. But other than that, I've been great. I have the best job in the world. I talk about incredible liquids. I get to taste some of the most spectacular whiskeys that are available, and I get to talk to wonderful human beings like you.
Well, thank you. I didn't want to lead the witness on that final observation, but thank you for playing the game. What have you been seeing in terms of whiskey circles and the circles you occupy? You're out there, you're talking to people, you're seeing consumers on the front line.
What have you been observing over these last 3 years within whiskey circles?
That's a great question. And things have definitely changed. I'm seeing different consumers for sure. People who are interested in Scotch whiskey coming from bourbon. I'm seeing quite a lot of that transition, and I'm sure you are as well. And they're interested in the history, the provenance. Some of them are interested in collecting them as well, so as an investment asset. So we're definitely seeing a pickup on that stuff. But a lot of it is just like people are just interested in well-crafted liquids with a genuine story behind them. And I'm not saying that bourbon doesn't, because it definitely does, but it's a different flavor profile. It's made differently. It's obviously made in a different country as well. So they get an opportunity to visit Scotland, and that's a big part of it. So we're seeing a lot of Scotch tourism. So people visiting our distilleries who want to see how it's made, who want to meet the people who make it as well. So the humanization of Scotch is another thing that's continuing to increase, and people have a genuine interest in people who make these wonderful liquids. So things have changed quite a lot. We're seeing a lot more experimental styles of whiskey coming out. We're seeing the utilization of different woods. 10, 15 years ago, you'd have been looking at sherry or American oak, occasionally PX or Madeira or a wine. And now we're seeing all sorts from different forests around Europe, where we're using Hungarian oak, or things from Tronkai forests, or we're using cask from Ronzacapa in Guatemala to do finishes. And so it's definitely getting more experimental, but the core of it is still about making an incredible new make spirit, because that's the genesis point. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we go through this. But creating an amazing new make spirit, and then that is your kind of blank canvas that you can then manipulate with these cask types. So it's pretty exciting. What have you seen?
I've definitely been seeing the need for... I've definitely seen the need to discover that new audience. And I think we've been in a place with the nation where we have some OGs who are ride or die single cask nation, and we love them to bits. But it's who's beginning their journey, who's just starting to ask questions about Scotch, and that's the place where I'm getting newly excited around this. Right, just like you're saying a second ago, I love the history. I love the people. I love the traditions. I love the geography, and we'll get into that today as well. But it's so much about the people who make this in Scotland, and then what gets sent out around the world. And to meet somebody who's a blank canvas, right? So someone who's just ready to say, tell me what I need to know about Scotch. You're like, oh, let me count the ways. So that's all vital, and I love seeing that. The experimentation, for sure. We're definitely seeing a lot more heavy toast, medium char. We're certainly playing around with chinkapin, third red wine, the STR stuff happening as well. So it's interesting seeing what does that do for flavor. It's not just another wrinkle, right? But what's the purpose of this? Why would you do that? That's the important thing for me.
Yeah.
But on that very topic of people, I did want to ask you, we're here today, we're going to focus on Clynelish. This is going to be a nerdy deep dive that we are super excited about. But I believe Clynelish is one of the 4 cornerstone distilleries with the Johnny Walker experience happening. And I think round about the last time we were talking, those were just beginning to open, or at least be worked on. How are you finding that? You mentioned whiskey tourism. How are those 4 corners working for you in Diageo?
Extraordinarily well. Because, not to try and make it sound myopic, because it isn't, but giving people these like clearly defined corners makes it much easier, because a lot of our customers have never been to Scotland before. So they do look for like a template, or they do look for like a guide or something like that helps them formulate what they're going to do whilst they're in Scotland. And some of our distilleries are fairly easy to get to. So if you're looking at Clynelish, obviously it's way far north. It's not easy to get to. But if you're looking at distilleries just outside of Edinburgh, you know, we've got Glenkinchie, so they can fly in, and it's not far at all. But historically, it was only like the hardcore or the people who were doing like a tour of the Northern Highlands who would make that pilgrimage up to see Clynelish and now Brora. And now we're seeing a real uptick in people who are going out of their way to come and see these distilleries. And Talisker is not easy to get to, but Skye is obviously a tourist destination.
Yes.
So you've got by proxy footfall to go to those distilleries. And Talisker sees about 55,000 people per year, which is a lot of people. But now Clynelish, it's definitely becoming one of those destinations, which is really exciting because it's a real beautiful location. The liquid we were going to talk about obviously is stunning, and then they've got an option to visit the hallowed ground of Brora as well, which we reopened a few years ago after being dormant for 40 years. So that's an additional element that folks can do by appointment only to see a wonderful gentleman called Andy Flatt, who I was talking to earlier on. So yeah, it's really had an effect, and we've got a lot more people now who are talking about Clynelish, and I feel like I've been on a kind of evangelical crusade talking about Clynelish since I moved to the United States. We only have one official permanent SKU here in the US, which is the 14. We don't get the Distiller's Edition. For shame, Diageo. I have been lobbying for it hard for many years, but you know, we're seeing a huge interest in Clynelish, and from people who you wouldn't expect. I talk to like folks all the time, and I was just in Montana, and I was talking to a bartender there, and he was asking me, he's like, why don't we get more Clynelish? It's one of the best single malts I've ever tasted. And I was like, well, that's a good point. I'm trying. I swear, I'm trying. And he's like, well, Europe gets everything. I was like, well, they always get everything. But yeah, I'm trying my hardest.
Is there a philosophy behind Clynelish only having a 14? You know, I think of the years where Oban only had a single official offering, but then there were the jumping off points for the Distiller's Edition. Is there a sense of eyeballs? Is there a sense of focus there where you want your consumer to dial in on the one part of it?
The 14 age statement was picked a long time ago, so that would have been people like Douglas Murray, who was in charge of our technical, and Jim Beveridge, who ran the whole blending team there. Keith Law, who's now retired, who were all huge fans of Clynelish, loved it. And it was one of their like hidden secrets that they didn't want too many people to know about. And they only make a finite amount of this liquid every year. So like we want to keep it for Johnny Walker or whatever. But they were like, well, let's do a release and see how it does. So they tasted through different age statements. They landed on the 14 because it's where they got a good cask extraction. So there was a decent amount of the sugars coming through from the wood. There was a lot of conversion of those aldehydes, and then that pineapple core to it, which we're going to talk about in a minute, is still prevalent. And obviously that waxiness is still there. They had they put it at a slightly higher ABV of 46, just to kind of help with that mouthfeel and that wonderful silky, oily, waxy note. So that's really where they landed on it. And then I think they regretted it because so many people fell in love with it, and they're like, we want more Clynelish. And they were like, curses. And then they had to release more. And if you talk to the blending team today, they all talk about Clynelish, and you could, you know, their faces light up because it's such an incredible liquid. And Dr. Emma Walker, who's now taken over from Jim, same deal. She loves Clynelish. And you can tell because every special release of Johnny Walker that comes out has Clynelish in it, because it adds incredible mouthfeel, texture, complexity, and then you've got this wonderful tropical heart to it. So it's a very unique whiskey. There's only two single malts left in Scotland that really have a pronounced waxiness, and it's Clynelish, which is pineapple wax, and Deanston, which is green apple wax, and they're the only two left. Whereas historically, a ton of them would have had that, and we'll talk a little bit about where it comes from in a minute. But Talisker used to be very famously waxy, no longer is. So if you were looking post World War II, up until 70s, 80s. A lot of single malts had that waxy character to them, and now only two remain.
I love that you bring that up, Ewan. This is why it's always a pleasure speaking with you. Is when Joshua and I were talking about the Clynelish that we've been working on, and we're talking about waxy, and we're talking about that distillery being known for it, I was asking myself the internal question of who else is doing this? Who else has this? And so the fact that you're on today saying Deanston, we definitely have a soft spot for Deanston, and I know we have a wonderful listener, Flo, who is Deanston through and through. Mike at Travel Bar is Deanston through and through as well, in Brooklyn, in case anyone's listened to this outside of Brooklyn. And so when you meet Deanston folk, they make themselves known. But the thought of us only having two waxy profiles in Scotland is kind of shocking, especially with what you're adding on about the history of waxiness. So
I'm also a big fan of the Deanston as well. They produce some incredible liquids. And my friend Brendan McCarran was running that site for a while.
Yeah, of course.
I was lucky enough to go around there with him and a few other friends a couple of years ago. And we had a wonderful insight into the production process, as well as looking at the new make spirit, both old new make spirit and new make spirit, after he'd kind of tweaked things a little bit and increased the fermentation times to ramp up that apple fruit note. So I'm a big fan of that distillery.
That's awesome. Well, before we get you paid by Diageo to talk about Deanston, let's have you on Clynelish. And the thing I'm going to say here is you have brought arguably the world's nerdiest PowerPoint, and I'm so appreciative. If you're viewing this on YouTube, you're going to get to follow along. You're going to get to see the slides. If you are listening on the audio version of the podcast, please, Ewan is a professional. Ewan is going to describe these as he goes through. This is absolutely going to work on audio. But if you want the little additional bonus, go seek this out on YouTube. It's under Single Cask Nation. You'll also get to see his sleepy, puffy, jet-lagged eyes. And
you're such a charmer.
You will know the commitment he has made to speaking with us this day. I have no excuse for my sleepy, puffy eyes. So you at least, sir, have a very good reason. So, all right,
don't make it weird.
Too late, mate. Too late. Here comes the PowerPoint. Here comes your first slide to the stage here.
Okay, so we were talking a little bit earlier about this, Jason. I was like, "Is this too nerdy?"
No, not for this audience.
Again, knowing our audience. So I wanted to talk about this. So I'll preface this by saying the last time I presented these slides was in 2018 in Atlantic City for a thing called FlavorCon, which was about 300 flavor scientists from the food and drink business. So both soft drink, alcohol industry, the people who come up with Doritos flavors, etc. So PepsiCo were there, and Nabisco, and all of these large flavor houses were there. So I had to try to explain how we manipulate flavor in Scotch whiskey, and a lot of them were quite new to this, but they're all scientists, so they could kind of get a grasp of this. But I will explain this. So at Clynelish, as opposed to Brora, its sister distillery, which is just across the road, we use shell and tube condensers, as opposed to Brora, which uses worm tub. Wormtab, I think you've all spoken about before, will give you a much heavier spirit because you're going from a vapor phase back to a liquid phase very quickly. You have less copper contact. So copper works as a purifier. And so you'll get a much heavier, more robust, slightly sulfury liquid from that. So think Mortlach, think Dalwhinnie, and you'll kind of get a good fix on what that kind of spent match sulfury note is, which provides a huge amount of flavor and also a really nice contrast between, you know, what the new make spirit style would be, which is like either fruity or malty or whatever. Then you're just adding that kind of funk to it. Yeah. I'm going to use the word funk quite a lot today because it's pertinent, not just because I like the word.
Yeah, all right, George Clinton, settle down over there.
Deep fries, go with that shake. Okay, so here, some of this might not make any sense, but it will in a minute. So the black bars here are copper stills, and the paler bars here are stainless steel ones. So if you look over, you will see things like DMS, and then you look over here, you'll see DMTS, and you'll see this huge variance in there. So DMTS is what it falls under a group of chemicals called mercaptans. They have a very sulfury note to them. Some of them have an off sulfury note, which is more like boiled cabbage, which is not a flavor profile that you would lean towards. But DMTS is dimethyl trisulfide. And copper actually works as an incredible purifier for this. So if you look at copper under an electron microscope, it's not smooth. It looks like steel wool all meshed together. Nice. And what that does is trap these compounds. They fall into it and get stuck. So the more copper contact you have, the less sulfur you have. Makes sense. We also are looking for a maximum amount of copper contact at Clynelish in the same way we're looking for maximum copper contact at Lagavulin. And we're doing a longer distillation runs, and we've actually reversed the still sizes. So typically you'll have a large wash still and a small spirit still. It's flipped in both of these distilleries. So we're looking for a maximum by 1,000 liters on both of them, actually. So we're looking for a maximum amount of reflux, a maximum amount of copper contact, and then using shell and tube with copper pipes in the inside of it to really purify it. So what we're looking for here is a light, bright spirit. And that's why we use shell and tube here. Right. So we're really wanting to emphasize that fruit core, that pineapple core, which we're going to talk a little bit more about in a minute. But that is why we're using shell and tube condensers specifically at this distillery.
Very quick one for you, Ewan. As you bring up the comparison to Lagavulin here, and we know about the aggressively down-facing line arms at Lagavulin, what kind of angle are we talking to the line arm at Clynelish?
It's not as pronounced as Lagavulin, but it definitely will go, it will swan up, and then it does have a decline on it. And again, we're going to get slightly nerdy here. That controls the vapor. So once we've had maximum copper contact in the still, it will go over the top of the line arm, and it will go down into the condenser. And that stops any more of that vapor falling back in there because we've already controlled what we need from it. So once it goes down, that's the point of no return, and then it goes down into its condenser, and then it gets obviously converted back to liquid. So yeah, it's not as pronounced as Lagavulin, but you can definitely notice that it goes down. Awesome. Around about the same as you would see at Talisker.
Ah, there you go. Lovely. Thank you.
The Talisker has worm tubs. Cooled by seawater. First distillery in the world to use seawater in their worm tubs.
That's awesome. My gosh. Trendsetters over at Talisker for a couple of centuries.
Yeah. All right. So do you want me to talk about distillation really quickly?
Please.
All right. Again, very few people have seen this. I do have permission to show you because I already showed it to 300 nerds in Atlantic City. And we also tasted them on new make Clynelish as well as mature Clynelish, so they got to taste both of them. So if you look here, and I will explain this.
Yes.
You will see 4 shots, spirit, and feints. Okay, 4 shots being on the left, spirit being in the middle, feints being on the right. And the spirit cut is the part that will go into a cask. 4 shots and feints will then go back into tanks. Typically, they will go into a homogenized tank in a distillery. So you'll mix your low wines, your 4 shots, and your feints. They'll go into a tank, and then they'll get redistilled on the next spirit run. Clynelish don't do that. They have individual tanks for all of these. So there's a low wine tank, 4 shots tank, feints tank, and that's quite unique in terms of distillation. But it also means that we have absolute control. So when we're leaving the feints, which I'll talk a bit about more in a minute because it pertains to waxiness, you can then control what we're looking for in terms of creation of flavor. And also here, if we're looking at manipulation, we have a very narrow spirit run here, as opposed to Lagavulin, which is very wide. Lagavulin want oily and huge spectrum of flavor, like from sweetness through to fruit, obviously with peat in there as well. What we're looking for specifically at Clynelish is fruit, pineapple, pear, and they call it the pineapple cut. And here's what you would expect to see in here. So you've got these flavors in here. So isoamyl acetate and ethyl acetate, one being pear and the other one being like a solventy pineapple note. And that's specifically what they're looking for here. So they're very binary in their approach at this distillery. And then you're adding on top of that the waxiness, which we'll talk about in a minute. But to be even more nerdy, here are the other flavor compounds that you would expect to see. And I will explain some of these as we go through it. You will see, and this is quite anomalous, or it might look anomalous, but it isn't, because I'm going to explain it. You will see there's a huge spike of these flavor compounds at the beginning, and then those dip down.
And the 4 shots?
Yeah, and then they will start to go back up again in this kind of bell graph thing. The reason why they're so high to begin with is those are the latent chemicals that are left over from the previous distillate run. Then those will then dip down, and then as they increase, and you've got this distillation process going on in here, you've got the recreation of these chemicals, or some of these chemicals, going back up the way. So that's why it goes in that manner. But you've got liquids in here, or chemicals in here, that have lots of different flavor compounds in here. So you've got ones that have got like a clove note to them, ones that have got like slightly earthy note to them, malty note to them, sweet note to them, candy floss note to them. So there's a huge amount of compounds in here that make up the flavor profile of Clynelish. And
interesting.
If I jump to the end of this, if you're looking at a bottle of Clynelish 14, you will see in here, it's at 46. So 53.9% of that is actually water. Then you've got alcohol makes up 46%. And the 0.1% is all of the flavor. So it's a tiny, tiny percentile. And you can see over on the right-hand side, if you've got very good eyesight, which I do not, especially not today, you will see all of those chemicals that I was talking about in here, everything through from whiskey lactones, which will give you that nutty coconut note, through to things like your dimethyl sulfides, which will give you that slight vegetal note, because there's always going to be a tiny element of that. Copper doesn't get rid of all of it. Then you've got things like your grassy notes, which is your hexanates and things like that. And then you've got that kind of medicinal note. If this was... You're always going to get a slight medicinal note, because cresol, phenol, or phenols will come from the cask. So even though you have no peat, you've got charred oak in there. And once you carbonize oak, there's a process called pyrolysis. You will get phenols. So if you ever hear these like whiskey nerds, and I've heard them ad nauseum going on like, oh, it's phenol free. No such thing. If it's been in a cask that's been toasted or charred, there's going to be phenols in there.
Interesting. Interesting.
There you go.
Gosh.
The other thing I was going to talk about is manipulation.
Yes.
Cask
Back to the wood, right?
Yeah, back to wood. So we have templates for all of the cask types that we use. This is first fill American oak hogsheads. We have them for like refill, rejuvenated. The same deal with sherry. We have them for all of our variances of sherry casks, PX casks, Madeira casks, etc., etc. And what you're looking at here is the timeline of what we would expect to see. So if you look here where it says immaturity, that's where it's new make spirit. So if you start off at top left, that's like the genesis point. That's new make spirit going into a cask. Over time, the immaturity will go away because of the toasting or char on the inside. So like a wooden Brita filter, effectively, you're removing a lot of the impurities and it becomes softer. Less of those harsh new make spirit qualities in there. And then, as you can see, you've got maturity coming in here. And what would you expect to see from first fill bourbon? It's vanilla and sweet. And that's what you're seeing here. We have these templates for not only all of our distilleries, but all of our cask types. So we know with a fair degree of certainty of what they're going to taste like at what age in what cask type. So you won't go beyond this apex point. If you look over to the far right up at the top, you will see distillery character and maturity kind of coincide there. That's kind of like where they meet. If maturity goes beyond distillery character, then it doesn't taste like the distillery anymore. It tastes like the cask that it sits within. So what we have to do, or Emma Walker and her team have to do, is make sure that we're taking our whiskies out of the cask before it gets to that point. Otherwise, it's not going to taste like Clynelish. And we have released whiskies that haven't tasted like the distilleries before. Lagavulin 37-year-old. Good example. Incredible. Doesn't taste like Lagavulin. So, and that was like, that wasn't by design or anything. That was a point where they went and tasted that cask and are just like, oh, this is the cask is starting to dominate here. So we're going to have to release this. And the distillery character will remain constant. The only thing you will see that will change with distillery character is the perception of smoke. So if this was Lagavulin, for example, the smoke would be way more subdued than it would be midway through this point here. If you went beyond this, then smoke gets pushed back. And it's not because phenols go away, it's because they get masked by other things that sit within it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was really fascinated in looking at this and watching the way distillery character seems to be occupying about the 3 to 8, 3 to 12 kind of range, years old, I'm saying here, and then starts to pull back in that cask, this bourbon cask. Then
if this was a refill, that would be a much longer timeline because it's a less active cask. Rejuvenated casks, and for the folks out there who don't know what rejuvenated casks, it's where we'll take something that's gone through probably 2 or 3 maturation cycles and then disgorge it, take the liquid out of it, remove the ends or the heads of the cask, scrape the char out, and then rechar them, which means that we get another maturation cycle out of it. And it also provides a different flavor profile. So you're going deeper into the wood, into like the red line of the wood. You're going to get more spice in there. So if people talk about rejuvenated casks, you're going to get more of a spicy note from them. Where if it's a first fill cask, I'm talking about American oak here. If it's a first fill cask, then you're going to get way more of that kind of hubba bubba, bubblegum, vanilla sweetness from them.
American cream soda, maybe?
Yeah. I just wanted to say hubba bubba.
I know you did. And you said it very well. So I'm curious. I know you've got the slide for the bourbon. Even if we could just speak broadly, if possible, what do you then see with some of the sherries? And how important is sherry to Clynelish?
With the 14, not. But we do casks. Of sherry casks where we put Clynelish into it, and we've done experimental casks where we've done where we've taken a sherry butt and we've filled it with 50-50 mix of Pedro Jimenez and Oloroso. So you've got those two contrasting liquids in there. So you've obviously got that raisin note, and then you've got that rich, like molasses note that's going to come through, that figginess. And we'll fill those up. We'll let that cask saturate, and then we'll disgorge it, and then we'll put liquids, Clynelish new make, into it. So we do sherry cask and PX cask Clynelish, and we do have like just Oloroso and just PX out in our warehouses as well. So the differences between the two, obviously you're going to get that really nice sweet note with that pineapple. So it's almost like a Scotch pina colada when you taste the 14-year-old, albeit with that wonderful waxy, oily, silky note to it. And that's why I love it. And then if you taste it in sherry, it's a very different beast. It's like fig Newtons covered in candle wax with a little bit of kind of a raisin. It's like almost like apple strudel raisin.
Oh yes,
in there, which is very unique, and it's absolutely spectacular. I'm salivating thinking about it.
I was just discussing apple strudel notes with a friend the other day, and it was like, yeah, absolutely. Apple strudel and whiskey is a special note.
Such is the parlance of a whiskey nerd.
It's when you get the fig Newton surrounded in wax, like that's when you know you're speaking to a specialist audience. Like I once said to somebody when the palate went waxy, I was like, yeah, it's like after you've licked a candle. And they just looked at me like, how many times in a day are you going around licking a candle? I was like,
I'm sure there's a subreddit for candle lickers out there.
If you can imagine it, Ewan, it exists on the internet.
I'm not going to look for that, by the way.
So I know we're talking flavor here. We're talking shell and tube condenser. We're talking the role of the cask here, and sherry and bourbon. And I want to come back and spend another little minute on this waxy, just so that we're all speaking the same language here, because I do feel like in whiskey circles, and we're as geeky as anybody, we're proud to be as geeky as anybody, you get a few kind of rumors around where the waxy comes from. And it's, insert your own distillery here for your own effect. But I read in passing about resin buildup on the faints receiver.
Yeah.
And I wonder how much is that true? And then B, how much does a distillery ever want to take ownership of a story like that? And how much is mythology taking the place of science? And I know you're a worldly chap and a learned chap. So where do you fall on that fainty in mythology and science?
Well, it's true. It is the faint receiver.
We heard it today.
And I asked when I onboarded with Diageo 15 years ago, there was a wonderful gentleman called Keith Law, who was one of the flavor scientists and blenders at Diageo. I asked him that question. And he was like, we've done a lot of study into this. There's a certain element that we still don't fully understand. But I said earlier on that Clynelish is individual tanks. So it has an individual faints receiver, low wines receiver, pour shots receiver, etc. Within that faints receiver, that liquid is left there for a reasonable amount of time. And what happens in that period of time is you get a buildup of fatty lipids and amino acids. Those will then clump together and stick to the side of the tank. And it looks like black sludge. And that is exactly what they call it. They call it the black sludge. And what they will do is keep that there, because it's that fatty lipids and it's those amino acids that they'll actually separate themselves from the ethanol. So they actually sit separately. So they're hydrophobic, sorry. So they sit as a separate entity to it. They don't incorporate. So if they were hydrophilic, they would incorporate into the mix.
Indeed.
They sit separately. So when you taste this on the palate, they actually coat your mouth. So you're getting these fatty lipids, these amino acids bonding on your palate, and then they're coating your palate, and then you're getting the flavor profile coming through from the spirit. Years ago, a unnamed distillery manager came to Clynelish and said, "What is this black stuff here? That's unsanitary. Let's clean it out." And they did. And lo and behold, they went off character immediately. The waxiness was gone. And it took them a number of months to go back on character. And since then, when they clean those tanks, and when they still do clean them, they will take some of that black gunk and put it into containers. And then once they finish cleaning it, they will then reintroduce it back into the tank. It's very odd. It's very, very not in keeping with a modernist way of making whiskey, but it's what makes Clynelish, along with its long fermentation, so 80 hours plus. They're doing a long fermentation there. They have a larger spirit still than wash still. Then you've obviously got the waxiness coming through from this unique way of storing our faints.
You absolutely took the words out of my mouth there, which is, it's amazing that we can be sitting here in 2025 removing the black sludge and then reintroducing the black sludge, because that's what makes Clynelish, right?
Yeah.
The fact that we haven't endeavored to find a chemical process or a bit of science, or the twisting of a swan neck on a still or anything like that. It's just no, mate. The black sludge is the black sludge. Get the black sludge back in. That's I love that. That's exactly why whiskey remains exciting to me, remains interesting to me, and I love the ownership being taken by the distillery on that as well. Which is you like the pineapple pear and the waxiness? Well, do we have a whiskey for you? What a special place. Really special.
There's no other whiskey like it in the world.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why I love it. And I'm going to get all misty-eyed again. It's like, I remember the first time I ever tasted Clynelish, I was like, this is like unbelievable. Like, this mouthfeel is incredible. It's so oily and silky, and then you've got this incredible like tropical heart to it, and then there's a really nice gentle minerality behind it as well. So almost the same kind of minerality that you would see with like a tequila or an agave spirit, with that wet slate minerality to it. And you get that with Clynelish, and that's one of the only Scotch whiskies that I can think of that gives you that contrast of flavor, as well as that minerality, as well as that exceptional mouthfeel. It's a unique whiskey. I love it. You probably picked up on that.
Yeah. Tell us how you really feel, Ewan. And so I'm really curious, given what we've been saying a moment ago about Emma Walker, given what we're saying about Johnny Walker, given what we're saying about the role Clynelish plays in the blend here, when you're tasting Johnny Walker, how much of that Clynelish are you getting in there? How noticeable is that for you?
To me, it's pretty noticeable. First you get the mouthfeel. As soon as I get that silky, oily, then I know there's Clynelish in there. And then you will sometimes pick up on that tropical note as well. And then, I talk to Emma quite frequently, and we kind of bond over our obsession with this distillery. And if you look at any of like the innovation stuff or the limited edition stuff that comes through, quite frequently you will see the inclusion of Clynelish because of what it lends to a blend. Smoke obviously is a trademark. That wisp of smoke is a trademark of Johnny Walker. But I would say that along with Cardew, which is going to give you that typical Speyside style, so that fresh cut grass, that green apple, that malty note, you're getting this really nice wisp of smoke, which typically is coming from Kalila in terms of the standard line. But then, we're also looking at using Port Ellens in there, Broras in there, with some of our newer creations that are coming through. So like Johnny Walker 52 will see the inclusion of these hallowed smoky whiskies, as well as incredible grain whiskies like the Cali from Edinburgh. We've got Johnny Walker Vault coming out soon, and the previous Johnny Walker Vault had 1977 Caledonian in it as well. And again, if you want to come back and talk about some of my favorite whiskies, the 40-year-old Caledonian, which came out in 2017, still in my top 5. It's like Werther's Originals on crack. It's spectacular. But yeah, I digress. But yeah, so it's part of that kind of that special sauce. I think Clynelish lends so much character, mouthfeel, and flavor that it's like it's a blender's dream come true to have.
And that certainly makes sense. As we're talking about this distillery today, as we're exploring the flavors, as we're exploring the textures, it sounds like a blender's dream come true. And it really sounds like a little goes a long way as well, which I'm sure makes a blender very happy. Right?
Yeah.
So,
and it's a relatively new distillery as well. So a lot of people think,
67.
67 was when Clynelish, the new Clynelish, was built, and then they obviously renamed the old one Brora in 69, and it produced smoky whiskies to make up for the shortfall in smoky whiskies. Kalila burnt down. So from 69 to 77 is the age of peat at Brora Distillery, whereas at Clynelish, they're producing this very high quality, waxy, fruity spirit. So two very contrasting distilleries that sat side by side up until Brora closing in 83. And then obviously we reopened it in 2021, and very excited when that reopened. I'm very lucky that I've gotten to visit that distillery on a number of occasions as well. So,
very lucky is today's understatement. Because of your geeky knowledge, Ewan, I was reading my first edition Michael Jackson Whiskey Companion this morning before meeting with you, and any chance I can read Michael Jackson from 1989, I make sure I do it. And in that little paragraph that he writes about Clynelish, he talks about it being present in a blend called the Real McTavish. And I'm really curious, given your level of knowledge and your time in and around this industry, have you encountered the Real McTavish?
No, I have not. I have read about it.
Okay.
I have never seen it nor tasted it.
Right.
But Clynelish has been part of blends for a long time. So not only in Johnny Walker, but also in Bell's, as well as White Horse. So they used it for the same reason they use it in Johnny Walker, as for texture as well as fruit characteristics. But yeah, no, the Real McTavish has eluded me.
Yeah.
Let's find some.
That's exactly my takeaway from this is, we have to find some. Also in 1989, Clynelish was a 12-year-old at 40%. Was the offering there. So I love that Diageo have a 14-year-old at 46%. I definitely like that 6% increase for what's being achieved with a single malt now.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. A lot of people think there's only 6% in ABV there, but as you know, what a difference that can make in terms of the backbone of it, and also helping to propel the flavor compounds that sit within it as well. So it's night and day when you taste them. And I've tasted the older one versus the current one, and there's so much more character and so much more aroma, and the mouthfeel is amplified as well. So there's a big difference. That little tweak in ABV makes a huge difference.
Yep. No, I absolutely heard on that front. Just to get you out of here, it's so easy to sit and talk to you, Ewan, and it's so easy to just geek out with you. And so thank you so much. And
You're
those
gonna make me
slides from
blush.
2018 are brilliant. Well, if I can't give you the most amazing whiskey you've ever had, I can at least make you blush and give you lovely compliments. But we started out talking about the last 3 years since we spoke to you. Hopefully, it won't be 3 years before we speak to you again. But in case it is, well, what are you seeing in your crystal ball over the next 3 years? What's on the docket for Ewan? What's on the docket, for whiskey? What's on the docket as you continue to be with Diageo? What do you see, man?
Well, if I had a crystal ball, which I don't, and I was looking into it, I would definitely see more interest. And we were talking about whiskey tourism earlier on. Definitely creating a more robust platform for people when they're in Scotland. We already have a very, very good one, but creating more opportunity and making it easier for people to visit Scotland, to visit these sites. I continue to do a ton of education and travel. The increase in private client sales has increased exponentially over the last few years. So dealing with individuals on a one-on-one basis, or taking people to Scotland, and we have a thing called Johnny Walker Vault in Edinburgh, where people can actually work with Emma Walker to create a one-of-one blend for themselves.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that starts at £50,000. There's a large wait list for that, by the way. If anyone is interested, then let me know. But have some patience. And then obviously there's this, Jason. There's the constant need for education within the off and on premise. So talking to bartenders, bar owners, etc., chefs. We do a lot of dinners with chefs. And explaining to them, the world of Scotch and the nuances and the flavor spectrum and the history. It's an ongoing thing, because there's still a lot of people out there who don't know the difference between a blended Scotch whiskey and a single malt Scotch whiskey.
Heard.
So explaining that, the fundamentals before you get into like the nerdy stuff that we were going through, explaining the fundamentals is still a critical part of our jobs. And for them to then get that understanding, they then start to fall in love with it, and you're creating advocates for the category. And I'm not just talking about Diageo whiskies. I talk about all whiskies, and I talk about whiskey as a category. And having them have their eyes open and their palates open to this new world of whiskey is kind of what excites me on a day-to-day basis, is watch people's faces light up when they taste something that they thought would taste like Band-Aid. I get that all the time. I think all Scotch tastes like Band-Aid, and then they taste something that has this kind of a wonderful honey note to it, this really nice gentle sweetness to it, and then they're like, oh wow, I didn't know that Scotch whiskey could taste like this. So I think we're kind of these evangelists out there who are out on this relentless crusade to turn America into Scotch aficionados. And there's a lot of them out there, but there's a lot of ones who don't know that they're going to be, and we're the ones who are there to convert them.
No, I love it.
The sermon is over.
I agree with you. Yeah, but I agree with you wholeheartedly. There's no doubt about it. And recently I did 7 masterclasses in a weekend at the Virginia Scottish Games, and people walked in excited to taste whiskey, but really I could have told them it was made from barley, and it would have blown their minds. You know, like it was an absolute starting point for excitement. And then we talked about flavors and lipids and casks and different casks and all the influences and the different years and the different strengths. And, a 45-minute masterclass could have been 3 days. There was so much to cover and so much to get people excited about. And that's what I remain focused on over these next few years, as well as the excitement that still exists around this industry we call Scotch and whiskey writ large.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that. I did a session by a river in Montana about 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, and it was supposed to last 45 minutes. It was only for a group of 4, they had been fly fishing, and then they were going to come off their fly fishing, and then I was going to take them through 4 whiskeys, 4 liquids. And a 45-minute session lasted 2 hours because they had never tasted these liquids before, and they had so much questions about it. And all of them went away and purchased Scotch whiskey after it.
That's it. That's it. And now they are on board with our category as well. That's fantastic.
For the rest of their lives as well.
Yeah.
It's not like a one and done thing. It's like that you've opened a whole new world of flavor and history and stories and all of this, the great texture that makes up Scotch whiskey, and people just fall in love with that. And then they find out there's real people who make it, and they find out distilleries like Oban who only have 7 people working there, and it kind of blows their minds. And it kind of we're just the facilitators of it, and to be part of that, I think we're very, very lucky.
We're going to add no more words after that, Ewan. That is the perfect message to get out of here on. So thanks so much for your time today and for sharing as much as you did.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate it.
Cheers, man.
Cheers.
Joshua, if you will join me in raising your SCN Clynelish to the memory of the Duke of Sutherland, Ewan Morgan, and all who may dine upon him. It was a time. It was absolutely a time. And for everything he was saying to make sense of the Clynelish that we have bottled for the nation, e-commerce, singlecasknation.com, here in the US. When we talked about cask maturation, when we talked about distillery character, and how does that shoulder up against cask influence, absolutely made me think of what you and I talk about all the time, with a distillery still shining through. Yeah. And even when the cask maybe takes over a bit more, it's still a good whiskey. But you just need to acknowledge that there's maybe less distillery character happening in that moment. So, cheers.
Cheers. Yes, I'm right. It's like that first sip, it was just full on pineapple, just tinned pineapples. I love that.
The fact that his PowerPoint had a pineapple on it, like that was so cool, so fun. And again, talking about pineapple, talking about pear drops, the candy that I talk about a lot, being some of those higher notes. The talk about the thinner cut on Clynelish compared to a wider cut point on something like Lagavulin. It's everything I want the conversation around whiskey to be, and speaks to decisions that are being made at a distillery.
Right.
I say that. You and I have talked previously about the waxy characteristic.
Sure.
We've talked about the faints receiver and the collection of fats in the faints receiver. Having that confirmed by you, and what did you think of that moment?
I honestly thought, oh God, I don't want to be so cynical, but I honestly thought that we were going to get a very obviously this is Ewan Morgan, right? He is not a corporate guy.
I think when I sit listening to him, I'm like, is he allowed to say some of these things?
Exactly,
but Ewan Morgan, he's been there for a long time.
Right. So you're going to get a straight answer, but I was afraid that, we might, I don't know. I didn't know what I was expecting. I just wasn't expecting the truth.
But it's one of those funny ones where you hear about getting a new still and putting a dent in it so that it matches the old, and that has more than a whiff of the I don't know which word to insert here, but a bit of the apocryphal about it.
Yes.
Whereas when someone says, we're dealing with the black sludge, and we clean it, but then we make sure some of that black sludge goes back in, and the last guy who cleaned and didn't put it back in changed the character of this distillate. right?
Mhm.
Like the fact that they've seen up close and personal the change that it does make to the distillate
Right.
is so telling and so important. And it was so funny just sitting talking with Ewan. It was like, I don't know why I'm not drinking more Clynelish. And then I think, well, there's only the 14-year-old at 46%.
Right.
So
Exactly.
that's a part of the problem.
Yep.
As Ewan had mentioned, there's no distiller's reserve coming to the US, or the distiller's edition isn't in the US. And then there's been the 2022 special release and the 2023 special release.
Right.
But it's the 14. The 14 is the standard bearer for the distillery.
Right.
And as Ewan's busy saying here, that's what those in power, want the distillery to be represented by. And it's a cracking representative.
It's always solid. You can always count on it. It absolutely represents the distillery. It's pretty much the same whiskey each and every time you grab a bottle. And it's a flawless little whiskey. Yeah.
Well, and I would say this, which you and I have said since we founded the company, but I think in this instance, the measure of an independently bottled Clynelish is that you grab it, and you and I grab independently bottled Clynlishes from other producers, other independent bottlers, because any chance you get to see another side or another cask from that distillery, you absolutely grab that with two hands.
Yes.
And so I'm really happy to see this being offered up to the nation for $120 a bottle.
It's absolutely the right price, and I could not be more proud of this whiskey, even if I tried.
Yeah.
I want to say one last thing about your conversation and just Ewan in general. I really love how much he leans into education. Right? It's just it's there's so many people who have this view of Diageo as the Death Star. And actually that is the nickname of Diageo by so many cynical people. But he's out there as the face of Diageo, but he's there educating.
Yeah,
he's there really laying it down for people who want to listen. And I've got so much respect for that, for him. And I think
100%.
it's just so important.
100%. And it's interesting for me because obviously he and I are both Scottish. Obviously, we're both born and raised over there. We both make our full-time homes here in America. We take responsibility for Scotch very seriously. Like this isn't just another product out in the world. This is our home spirit. That means something.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm an independent bottler. I get to talk about different distilleries all the time. That my remit is talking different distilleries. He's a Diageo man, and well, sure, that gives him access to about 30 distilleries. Some of those are much more front and center than others.
Sure.
But again, just like today, we briefly talked Deanston, right? Deanston was of interest to him, right? Yeah. He's a Deanston fan as well as he's a Diageo guy. And so that to me is always the measure of somebody is, sure, there's this entity paying your salary, paying your bills, signing your paycheck, but you're a whiskey person first and foremost. And that is second to none. So a big cheers to Ewan for making time for us, for really going into a geeky dive in the way we like to do geeky dives. Yeah, we'll always reach out to him. It might have been 3 years and it might be another 3 years, but we're always looking for him, whatever we find ourselves.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think you mentioned it in your conversation with him. What was it? Season 6, episode 4 was the last time?
Confidence in numbers over there. Absolutely.
Confidence in numbers. There you go. That was a fun conversation. Yeah. If you haven't checked it out, please do check it out. It was such a wonderful conversation. And I was lucky enough to be part of that one. So,
well, this episode goes live September 17 globally. September 18, we are releasing our latest Single Cask Nation Clynelish on singlecastnation.com. If you're watching us here on the YouTubes, we also have a tasting video for that if you'd like to learn more about it. If you're listening to this in your car, please feel free to make your way to the YouTubes, look up the Single Cask Nation channel. You'll see our tasting videos. You'll also have a chance to see the presentation, the PowerPoint that Ewan brought along with him for today. And if you do make your way to the YouTubes, please be sure to subscribe. That way you'll get the latest information on tasting videos, releases, episode drops, I think the kids say.
That's what they call it. Yep.
You'll get the latest drops information. And again, it's another way for us to communicate with you. We're all busy people. We're busy. You're busy. We're all pulled in different directions. We're trying to put things on the YouTube that are worth your time. If you're a long-time listener of One Nation Under Whiskey, hopefully you know we're not here to waste your time. So the same ethos is in play for YouTube. I believe it's .com. Am I getting that correct? YouTube.com?
YouTube.com, which I think is short for company, maybe. .company.
Oh, maybe it's .ltd.company for limited company? Yeah. Apparently, if you put YouTube into Google, it'll take you to the correct YouTube. You can
God, it's so funny how you really like to lead with you being a Luddite about this whole social media online stuff, because talking with Yoni today, he was reveling in it. He makes as many memes. He watches our podcast here and he waits for you to make some sort of a flamboyant face, and then he does a screen grab and he makes a meme of it, a meme you'll never see.
And that's it. That's it. I love that he doesn't feel the need for me to see it. That makes me the happiest. Also remember the Luddites did destroy developments and technologies. I'm merely walking away and leaving the choice to use them to other people. If only other people would use them better. I think the world would be a better place.
So much better.
That's a conversation for my TikTok channel.
And on that note, cheers, big ears.